friends, and welcome to Flosstube and Variety Show number 128. Today is September 20th, 2024, and I'm Emily Williams in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. This is, by the way, a lovely day. It's late in the afternoon. You can maybe see the slanting light on the woods behind me. I really enjoy this time of year, actually. And as the days get shorter, which they will begin to be, the time of the sun being up will be longer, shorter. Oh my goodness. All right, I'm not cutting anything out of this. I'm not going to edit it that much, but you know what I mean. The days get shorter continuously from June through December, and we pass the equinox on Sunday, which I know a lot of people find sad and depressing, and I'm sorry about that. It's one of the normal cycles of our globe, of course, and I happen to really like the months when it's darker. And I like the other months too, but I don't mind it getting darker. But enough waffle, as somebody I know says. Flosstube means cross stitch, and variety show means something else. And we'll discover what the variety show is later. For now, cross stitch. Now, I have not shown you this in a while. This is Nancy Cook. Does it have a date? She's 13. I don't think, oh yes, it's 1820 something, one maybe, up here is the date. This is the pre-project for the Mrs. Parkman's Academy of Needlework, the third edition of the Great British Sampler Weekend, which is next October in England. And so I started this a while ago, and I haven't worked on it much, but it's Sampler September, so of course I worked on it. So here's where I am. I had been about up through the Z before, so I finished out that line and did the next line of this funny script alphabet. And one of the things I think is charming about this sampler is its quirkiness. It just strikes me as odd. It's sort of funny. And it's also interesting. So here, she stitched this. See, she ran out of space here, which suggests that her piece of fabric was hemmed before she started stitching. But she has SAMPL, and then above it is ER. And on the Facebook group that's related to this event next October, I've seen at least one person's finish where they put the ER next to the word sampler. And I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stack it up like that, because I think that's one of the interesting things about this sampler. Another interesting thing is, she says, Samuel and Laner Cook are the names of my honorable parents. I just love that. I've not seen that on another sampler. And also it's interesting to me that she's 13, and yet this seems an unsophisticated sampler. And we've seen, I'm sure if you've looked at reproduction samplers, there are some amazing samplers done by children younger than 13. But anyway, this is in 3 shades of DMC, which is as charted. It's black, and then a light blue and a dark blue. And I'm doing this on 16 count flannel flower. I believe this is flannel flower, but it might be up in the attic. One of those maybe, by Fox and Rabbit. At 36 count, is that what I said? And I have another piece, so this gets divided. See, I don't know if you can tell, there's a seam here. And so we are to stitch it on 2 pieces of fabric, or stitch it on 1 piece and then cut the fabric, and then do a felled seam, which the instructions that came with this pattern tell how to do that. And that's what we're supposed to do. So another piece I haven't shown you in a while is this ABC sampler. This is also Hands Across the Sea. This is free on the Hands Across the Sea website, and Nicola did some videos teaching the specialty stitches that are in it. And so I can't show you the whole chart because though it's free, it is copyright by Hands Across the Sea Samplers, and there isn't a picture, a cover picture of it. So you'll just have to imagine that the alphabet continues, and you'll just have to discover what comes next in the specialty stitches as we go along. So the most recent things that I don't think I'd shown you are these are, or maybe I have shown you the half stitches or 10 stitches down there, but this is more recent, blanket stitch or buttonhole stitch. And the way it's charted is to do what the red line is, which is 4 threads high, all the way across in 4 different colors. But in the tutorial, she showed other ways to do the buttonhole stitch that appear in samplers. And so I decided that I was going to do some variety. So the top line is 3 threads high, and then 4 threads high. And then the green set starts out 4 threads high, and then it alternates between 4 and 2 threads. And then at the end, I do it every thread in terms of width. And then at the bottom, I start out with 4 threads, and then I go to every thread. And Nicola is stitching her examples with Ouvert Soie on probably 36 or 40 count, and so the coverage is different, and the this section here where it's every thread but 4 threads high, you know, it's more filled in. I'm using 1 strand of DMC on 36 count Zweigart Platinum. But that's really fun. And so I'm just going to carry on with the alphabet. So I'm up to the Q on the top and the S on the bottom. Those are in yellow, hard to see. I'm going to carry on with the alphabet until I've done enough to anchor out the position of the next section of specialty stitches, and I don't remember what they are. The videos where these tutorials show up, it starts around 370 or 371, something like that. So if you look in Nicola's listing, the first few were as part of her weekly Flosstube, and then she began to separate them into separate videos. So she would do a weekly Flosstube, and she would also do tutorial. So you'll just have to sort of search around to find the beginning when she begins teaching all these stitches. So I also worked on Harriet Salt. I started this in June. I think I'm going to take about 3 years to finish it, and it could easily be longer, but this is also Hands Across the Sea. Is everything I'm showing you today Hands Across the Sea? Not quite, but almost. I've been inspired to do this because of the story of the Bristol orphanages and George Mueller, and Harriet Salt's own story, which is included in this booklet. But I just also love a red sampler, and this is going to be a formidable red sampler. So what I did since the last time you saw this, which has been a number of weeks, I added more letters to this line, and then I started the next 2 lines of letters. My thought is I'm going to start 4 more lines, and then I'm going to carry each of them across. But it's nice to have a variety of type of letter to work on, because these letters are very fun to stitch, this top row. Each letter takes quite a while, and then you get down to the 8th row of these, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, which is the 4-sided stitch line. And that will be its own particular challenge, but some of the lines above it are probably going to take less time per letter. And I'm doing this on 37 count Russian tea cake with DMC 321, 1 strand over 2 strands, 1 over 2. And I love it. And I think it looks good. 37 count is sort of the borderline where I feel like one strand is good. 36 count is one strand of Auvert Soie is good. This DMC is not quite as thick as Auvert Soie, but. And I also worked a tiny bit on Hannah Campbell, which is Hands Across the Sea. This is just a stunning sampler in my opinion, and I have enjoyed working on it. I didn't do much on it. I actually, when I was planning to work on it, I thought, oh, I'll finish that tree in the lower left-hand corner, and then I'll see what else. I'll work on a couple of the over one letters. So I opened it up and discovered I'd already finished the tree. So what I did this time is I carried the red doodads around that central motif, this cartouche, and finished this red pendant thing. So I'm almost finished with the red around the edge of this. And then I did these two letters, these over one letters. They're just so beautiful, those letters. I hope those are focusing. I can't see it at all, of course. I really love that. This is 36 count Ballet Slippers by Fox and Rabbit, which is sort of a tan with a little pink hint to it. And I would like another, I mean, this sampler is going to take most of this piece of fabric. I wouldn't mind picking up another piece of ballet slippers, maybe 40 count, but so enjoyable. So my plan on this is, originally I thought I was going to finish it in 2 years, but I'm not sure that's realistic, given the other things I have either going or planned. So not sure about that, but I'll finish it sometime in my lifetime, I believe, Lord willing, but who can know? Who can know? So what I've shown you so far is the theme of alphabets. Did you notice? Maybe you didn't, but it's sampler September, and it just so happened that everything I worked on at least one letter of the alphabet. So this was the S and the U down here. And on, of course, the ABC samplers, I did some ABCs. Harriet Salt, it's all alphabets so far. Nancy Cook, mostly alphabets so far. And, but I did do one other thing this past week, which was I finished Bethlehem. And I have not fully finished it, although I think I've decided what I'm going to do. So this is, I believe, 32 count Lugana. It was dyed by Fox and Rabbit, and it's not a color that they have available. It was a special sale offered to patrons who could buy their leftovers from a retreat, a memorabilia retreat that they did. But here we are. Here's our journey to Bethlehem. And there is some kind of a mistake up in that early part. I don't remember exactly where, and I don't know what it was, but I fudged it, and nobody will ever know. And now we're getting closer to the stable, and here's the stable. And I'd asked you all's advice about what thread to stitch the baby Jesus in, and also the stars in the sky. And in the end, I decided to stitch it, the stars and the image of Jesus in the manger with the same color thread that I've been using, which is DMC 3799. It's a dark charcoal gray color. And I did take, so some of you advised gold or gold stars and other things like that. I did take the suggestion to not stitch the long stitch star that is in the chart. I didn't do that one. And I'm sort of holding off on moving to the next step of my final finish of this in case I change my mind about that, but I think I'm not going to. I think I'm going to be happy with not stitching that. I think it's sort of out of keeping with the style of the rest of it. So what are you going to do, Emily? How are you going to finish that? So it's about 3 inches by, I don't know, 18 inches or 16 inches maybe. And I think I'm going to mount it, that is, pin it to a foam core board and give it a little margin. And then do some sort of a stand-up arrangement with another foam core board that I'll somehow cover with fabric. Or I could just do a flat thing and put cording around the edge using this same color. I think to be safe, I would probably buy myself a fresh skein of this color because it takes some length. And if this is, say the final size is 17 by 14, that's quite a few inches of cording that I'll need. And you have to use, it's about 3 or 4 times the length because when you twist it, it seizes up. Is that right? There's a formula for it that I have somewhere. If you want to learn to make cording, you can learn it on from Vonna Pfeiffer. That is the place that I learned it. So in the spirit of alphabets on samplers, I was going through some piles of things. Oh, I should tell you about my catalog of my fabric too, which I will in a moment. I was going through some stacks of things I brought back from England last year and from Cincinnati earlier this year. And let me actually open this because there'll be some unnecessary glare if I don't. I came across this sampler, which is French. It is by Soie, Simone de Jong. She was a presenter at the Great British Sampler Weekend last year. And this was in the door prize bag. I think it was in Leslie's door prize bag, and I think I begged her for it, something like that. But I just love this, and I want to stitch it, which is insane because I have a lot of projects going. And I'll tell you in a moment about someone else. But this is by LM. We don't know the name, and the dates on it are 1914 to 1917. And the letters are in blue and red with the sort of, I was going to say greenery. Well, it isn't green, but leaf design around each letter, and then the little corner motifs and a border. And this thing that her name is in, the crowns, the 2 dogs, birds. I mean, it's really nice. And it does strike me as very French. So I want to stitch that. It's 226 by 313 stitches. So that's not enormous given that it's just letters and it's just once through the alphabet. So once you've stitched that A, that's the last A. Unlike a Bristol sampler where if you stitch an A, you'll stitch 15 of them or 20 of them. So anyway, I do think I might start that. So I want to talk to you now about things I'm going to start, and then I'll talk to you about another Flosstuber I watch. So Leslie and I at the Mrs. Parkman's Academy of Needlework event in May in Cincinnati with our guild, the Queen City Sampler Guild. Nicola Parkman was the speaker, and she released the Queen of the May that weekend, and of course we all bought it. And so I bought it, and this is it, and it is just, I just think it's beautiful. So it has a beautiful border It's very symmetrical. I looked it over pretty carefully. It has a symmetrical layout of these flower basket things, tree-ish things. And then it has this vast acres and acres of grass with many, many animals, and these two little houses on either side of the mansion. And this shepherd person down here, who's quite interesting. And it's a couple of peacocks. It's a Scottish sampler. And the Jesus, permit thy gracious name to stand verse. So it's just beautiful in so many ways. And it's DMC, I'm going to do it in DMC. So Leslie and I have decided we're going to do it. Now, she stitched this. The date on it is March 1st, 1826. She was 12. Hannah Green, this is, as you see up here, Hannah Green, 1826. Well, March 1st, 2026 is in a year and a half, give or take. So Leslie and I are going to start it January 1st and finish it by March 1st, 2026, 200 years after the original was stitched. And I drew out a little plan of what we're going to do. I actually divided it into 18 sections, but it's actually I think it's going to be a much quicker stitch than its size would suggest. Because, for instance, all of the flowers are the same. All of these pink chrysanthemums around the outside are the same. So once you start doing pink chrysanthemums, it'll be easy to keep doing them. The inner flowers are outlined, and then the same colors on the inside. So you can outline things and then fill them in front of the football game. Even the grass, you can make the animals and then fill in around them. Now, each of these baskets or urns has underneath it a something that it's sitting on, which is rice stitch, which is, I think, the easiest of the specialty stitches. The verse is over one, and all these little birds, flock of birds there are over one. So that's something to think about. And the feathers of the peacocks are satin stitch. So there's a little bit of specialty stitches that you need to give some attention to. And they're over one. But by and large, it is, I think, going to be a pretty quick sampler to stitch. And I'm excited about doing it in 14 months. So that would be January through March 1st. So I'm going to do that. And I was thinking I didn't have a piece of fabric to do it on, but then I remembered that when I was in England, I bought some fabric. So I have a yard of Just the Ticket by Tabby Cat Linen, which is actually the called for fabric. And I'm going to do the DMC threads. Now, what I usually do is I look through the list. So if I do it on 36 count, DMC, 2 strands, it tells in the legend on the back of the pattern how many skeins you need. And so some of them are not, that color doesn't show up as much as other colors. And so if I find a color that I don't think shows up too much, I might use what I already have in my stash. And some of this thread in my stash is from the 1980s. But anything I think uses more than what I already have that's already from the same time period of DMC manufacturer, I will buy myself some new skeins. And I might just go ahead and buy all new skeins, because it's only about, let's see, how many colors is it? 2, 3, 4, 5, 16 colors, and a couple of them require more than one skein. So it might be 23 skeins altogether, which at 60 something cents a skein, that's very cheap to have everything be fresh and new. So that's one thing that is going to start in January. I showed you this last week, this Victorian stained glass. This is by X Stitchery Design on Etsy. I haven't started it yet, don't worry. I did some more poking around and I found another stained glass, also Victorian era appearing stained glass. Same designer. This is a little bigger. This one is 155 by 210. Of course, it's full coverage, so that's some stitching. And this one is 206 by 279. So it's bigger. We'll see. I was looking at Happy Mood Point, which is one of my Ukrainian design people that I've followed. And I found this. I'd actually saved it. And if you watch the Galloping Horse video from a couple weeks ago, you saw that Cindy had stitched something by, I meant to look up who designed that. Anyway, it was a tree-shaped design of spools of thread with sampler motifs on them. And so this is something similar for Easter eggs. And I have a piece of fabric called, that's called Say Cheese. It's sort of an orangish yellow 18 count Aida. That's from Fox and Rabbit. It was a Patreon fabric a few months ago, or maybe last year. And I think I might stitch some sort of Easter design on it. I might do this. But my thought was that that's a very bright orangish yellow, and if I use turquoise and fuchsia and orange and red, you know, really bright colors, I could do Easter type designs. I was thinking of doing a great big Easter egg and use bands and border motifs from other samplers just to have fun with that and with the brilliant colors. We'll see. I do want to use that piece of fabric for something because it's quite unusual. And also, while I was poking around, yeah, I mean, I'm about to tell you about somebody, which puts my insanity in perspective. But so these are by Sam X Stitch, and I think it's a she. And the address is Spain, and these are PDF downloads. So this is a William Morris oak leaves or autumn leaves design, all over design. And this is obviously a Christmas design. And the things that appeal to me about them is that they're hoop finishes, made for hoops, which make it easier to finish them and less expensive to finish them. And they're not enormous. I don't have the stitch count written on, but they're about maybe 100 stitches, possibly. And I especially like this. I think it's very, very nice. Now, because I finished Bethlehem, remember that's the Nativity Sal piece, i.e. the third weekend of every month, Christmas-themed stitching. So I finished that. I started it last December. So I finished it in, what was that, 10 months of working on it? And I think one of the months I didn't work on it because I was away. So I have third weekend Nativity Sal stuff coming up. I mean, available time for working on that. And I had said before that I was going to work on a piece called Winter Garden by Modern Folk Embroidery, that was going to be next. And I do want to do that. That will be coming up. But I think I will actually try to chart a gift for somebody and stitch it instead for the next, see, I'll have October and November to get that finished and in the mail to a friend. And I think if I put my mind to it that I can do that. So I don't think I'm going to start Winter Garden yet. I might start it next year. And of course, I know Teresa, you're working on Oscar, which is a little Christmas piece by a boy named Oscar, who stitched a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to his parents. I can't remember, was the story that he was in the Navy and was away from home? He was, you know, in his, a young boy, maybe 11 or 12 years old, something like that. and I don't remember the date, but I know Teresa's working on it as her Nativity Sal piece, and I really would like to stitch that at some point. I haven't done it. I haven't bought the chart yet. So we'll see. We'll see. That might be, it might end up in the pipeline. So let me tell you about a Flosstuber you might enjoy. Sarah of Stitchin' Mommy. Stitchin' Mommy is the name of her Flosstube, and Sarah is her name. She does a weekly cross-stitch update, usually on Mondays, occasionally on Tuesdays, and she stitches full coverage, she stitches Mirabilia, she stitches Heaven and Earth Designs, she stitches Cute, she stitches Beautiful. She does not do much sampler stitching per se, but she does every other kind of cross stitch that you can imagine, and some counted needlepoint type stitching, and yeah, occasional quilting. And she just put out, maybe 2 weeks ago, she put out her annual whip parade, which she usually does in August or September, because A, it's not the time that everybody else is putting out their whip parades, and secondly, because it's a good time for her to do it. And her video this year, her whip parade, so my whip parade, if I did a whip parade, it would take 30 minutes at most. And that's if I talked a fair amount about each piece, because I think right now I might have 9 or 10 things going. Sarah has categories: full coverage, Mirabilia, full coverage without background, and some other family pieces and things like that. And she has 102 pieces going. And she does still purchase charts and fabric and floss because she wants to do some more things. She has more things she'd like to do. She has new starts planned. She has, yeah. Now, one of the reasons I'm interested in watching her is because every week there's something different to see. She really has such a variety of things in her stockpile of things she's working on that there's always something new. And secondly, because her way she organizes herself, the way she plans out her stitching is quite fascinating to me. I'm a planner, and I find it very interesting how she does it. She is participating in WhipGo and other challenges of that sort. And what she says, frankly, so she's probably in her 40s, I would say, based on the age of her kids. And she says, quite frankly, I do not expect that I will finish all these projects during my life. But many of them I do want to finish, and I have them going because they are ways to answer prompts that come up in these different challenge groups and cross-stitching groups that she's part of. And I understand that. I think that makes a lot of sense. I had actually considered doing that kind of thing because it's fun to participate along with other people. It's sort of like stitch-alongs that are a little bit more self-directed. So I admire that. I find it fascinating. But the reason I was bringing her up today is you might enjoy watching her, especially if you like a wider variety of projects than I usually show, but also because she has 102 whips. So I have 10 whips. I do not feel bad about my number of whips. I have a fairly high desire to finish all the ones I have going. I don't think that any of them are just for the pleasure of working on them from time to time. I think I actually want them finished. I want to possibly frame them or make them into little pillows or something. So I have a little bit different purpose in stitching than Sarah does. But even my 10 or however many whips, I haven't counted recently. And the other things I want to start, and the things that I have the charts for, that I have a plan of starting them at some point in the future, on a particular way of thinking about it, I don't think I would ever want to have 100 whips. And also I'm too old to have 100 whips, frankly, because it would not be possible for me to finish 100 whips of the type that Sarah has going in the time left to me on this earth. Even if I live an extraordinarily long and healthy and capable life ahead of me, it's still, what she has going is beyond my life expectancy, I'm sure of it. And I'll just say I hope that cross-stitching and quilting and knitting and all of these types of things exist in heaven, and I hope that I get to learn some new things, because I also always am interested in a new hobby. So I suppose you can count my talking about Sarah as the variety show, or my talking about whips in general as my variety show. Oh, one of my Sampler September projects was going to be to inventory my fabric, and I ended up with 74 distinct pieces of fabric, I think, and I think there's one or maybe two pieces of fabric that are in projects that haven't been cataloged as either in a project or not in a project, that they're just not yet accounted for. There might be 2 or 3. But some of those are individual pieces that were cuts for ornaments that I purchased last year at the Great British Sampler Weekend. I don't worry about those as being individual pieces of fabric. So I have a few full yards. I have a few large pieces. I have some pretty good stock of Aida in various cut sizes and counts and colors, and quite a bit of linen. And I will just say that when the strange thing is, most of my linen is sampler colors. And when I spread out each piece to measure it, I spread it out on the card table, and I want to stitch something on this. This is so beautiful. I have so much beautiful fabric. I am going to Hobby House Needleworks next month. What will I do? Maybe I won't buy anything. Not likely. At least I'll buy something that will be a memento of this event and trip that I'm making up there. But maybe I don't need to take my larger suitcase. What do you think, Leslie? Friends, always fun to spend time with you. Thank you so much for joining me. I think I'll be back next week. Don't think I have any plans that would make that not happen. Hopefully I'll have some interesting stitching to show you. Today was Alphabet Week. Maybe next week will be Border Motif Week. I don't know. Maybe it will just be a normal whatever comes to my hand to stitch on. Thanks for joining me. I hope that your stitching, your weekend is coming up, that you enjoy the way the light slants in your part of the world. And many blessings to you, friends.